Last week, I told you who was the best coach in the Sun Belt West. This week, I'm telling you who's the best coach in the Sun Belt East. It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sun Belt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. All right, we will do the Sun Belt East coaches here in the first and second segments. Then we'll get to the basketball, and I wouldn't have believed it if I wasn't watching it. ULM shocks South Alabama, and the game wasn't particularly close. South Alabama made one little run at the beginning of the second half and then a little bit late in the second half, but never really threatened. ULM absolutely controlled and dominated this game. South Alabama never made the adjustment. They never switched up defensively, and we'll get into that. We'll get into that later. Troy also beats Southern Miss. Remember, these were the games that got snowed out. You don't ever hear that too often in the Sun Belt. And that score was not nearly as close as the game was. Troy was blowing them out. Southern Miss makes a late run to make it respectable. All right, we will get to that later on. Let's rank, if you will. We'll do 3 and 3 as it turns out. We'll split them up. We do have 7 coaches, but kind of tough to rank the 2 new coaches in the Sun Belt East because they haven't coached yet. I don't think they've been head coaches yet. These guys are both coordinators, and so far, I think they are doing a pretty good job. And let's get them up here. Dowell, Logans, and Tony Gibson. All right, number 6. All right, so it's Tony Gibson and Dowell Logans. Obviously, Gibson at Marshall and Logans at App State. All right. Gibson doing a really good job of replenishing Marshall. Obviously, Charles Huff getting all the pub down in Southern Miss, taking all the Marshall players, and Gibson kind of, I don't know, low-keying it or not, but has done a really good job of replenishing the Marshall roster. Okay, Logans has done a pretty good job getting some quarterbacks at App State. Joey Aguilar moving on to UCLA. And both these guys have their work cut out for them, right? Logan's trying to get App State back to that championship level, and Gibson has his work cut out for him trying to maintain that championship level in the era of transfer portal and NIL, with Charles Huff taking a big chunk of his championship team down to Hattiesburg and Southern Miss. All right. And it'll be interesting to see how these guys do, right? These guys are a lot like Tim Beck, have a ton of experience, just never have been head coaches before. Whereas a guy like Bob Chesney had a ton of head coaching experience, but needed that one big break, which he got, to become a head coach at the FBS level. So I got Tony Gibson, Dowell Logans at number 6. All right. And let's see if we can get number 5 is Del McGee. Okay. Del McGee, Georgia State Panthers, has done a tremendous job recruiting. Okay. And remember, he was behind the 8 ball when he got the gig. Came in late, already 2 spring practices in 2024. When he got the gig, has to put a staff together and has to do it on the fly. Ends up with a huge win over Vanderbilt, but really could not build upon that. However, that has not stopped him from getting a really good portal class coming in for 2025. And even the number 1 or number 2, that seems to change on a regular basis, recruiting class for Georgia State. All right. The problem is the number one recruiting class isn't going to affect the team until, maybe the 26 or 27 season, depending on how many guys stick around. The other thing Del McGee has done is he hasn't waited. Last year wasn't good enough. I think he's got 2 new coordinators, including former NFL head coach Hugh Jackson is now the new offensive coordinator. So Del McGee has set a standard. They did not live up to that standard last year. He's making changes. So I kind of like he's not waiting around. All right. And you can't wait around. All right. In football, you don't have 4 or 5 years to build a program. We've seen that, right? We saw Curt Cignetti do a heck of a job at Indiana, regardless of if they belonged in the playoff or not. They still had a memorable season, and he turned things around in 1 year. All right. We'll see what Del McGee can do in year number 2. I think they will take a small jump in year number 2. They need to see if they can compete for a bowl game. And then maybe in year 3, see if they can contend in the Sun Belt East. All right. Number 4. Before we take a break, will be, if we can find them, is gonna be Old Dominion's Ricky Ronnie. All right. Got to a bowl game a couple years ago, let that one slip away, and then just had a woulda, coulda, shoulda roller coaster ride this season. He may have found his quarterback, Colton Joseph, coming back, explosive, and this is going to be the year that Old Dominion and Ricky Ronnie need to contend in the Sun Belt East. With the amount of turnover in talent, coaches, quarterbacks, this has got to be the year that Old Dominion contends. Did not have the year they should have. Should have won some ball games that they didn't early on. That kind of set the tone. Then they ended up winning some games that maybe they shouldn't have, and kind of finished up a little bit surprisingly stronger towards the end, and then I think let one get away at the end. But I like Ricky Ronnie, maybe a little bit on the hot seat. He's got to come up with a big season this year and see if he can contend in the Sun Belt East. Again, you have those windows where we'll see if all that talent from JMU that has been winning and sort of took off to Indiana and has graduated and has moved on, is there an opening there? Marshall's talent has moved on. We'll see what transferred in. All that App State talent is gone. We'll see what Georgia Southern does. All right. It's an opportunity for Ricky Ronnie and Old Dominion to make a move. Okay. We will come back and we will tell you who is the top coach in the Sun Belt East right after I tell you about FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here. 1 game, 2 teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, tails. Always tails. FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to final whistle. The live betting feature lets you stay involved no matter what happens on the field, and the app is super easy to navigate. Plus, knowing that you can place a $5 bet and potentially win $200 in bonus bets for the Super Bowl, that's icing on the cake. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your teams every day. We are going over the Sunbelt East coaches. Last week we had, Charles Huff as the number 1 coach in the West with Desimo number 2, and I think G.J. Kinney number 3 off the top of my head. All right, third best coach in the Sun Belt East is Coastal Carolina's Tim Beck. He has a ton of assistant coaching and coordinating experience. This is his first chance at being a head coach, and he's only taken his team to a bowl game twice. This one, this past season, he had a bowl game, didn't quite work out for him. Learned the hard way about the portal, as he didn't lose one quarterback. He lost both quarterback, and he had a really inexperienced bunch of guys playing in the bowl game. I think they went out last year to Hawaii and won the bowl game. So he's had 2 seasons, 2 bowl games. That's a good job. And he is understanding that these are year-to-year programs. He needs to try and figure out if he can find a quarterback to stay there for a couple of years. All right. But he's done a really good job for a couple seasons. See if he can find his Grayson McCall, which very wisely he has brought Grayson McCall back into the program. If Grayson wants to be a coach long-term, maybe Grayson could be finishing up his college degree. I don't know where he is with that, or maybe just getting his graduate degree. He could be doing that as well. But he's brought him back into the program, and that's a great job by Tim Beck, certainly endearing himself to the Coastal Carolina faithful. So that's a good job by Tim Beck, and I think he's done a good job. If he does find the quarterback, can Coastal Carolina contend? All right, so a lot of those Jamie Chadwell players are long gone. So these are going to be all the Tim Beck players in year number 3. All right, the number 2 ranked coach in the Sun Belt East is Clay Helton. Has had a ton of success. All right, he too has had this. He's going into year 4, and he's had 3 different quarterbacks. We're going into probably for the first time, he'll have the same quarterback. All right, we have talked endlessly about the interception issue that he's had with all of his quarterbacks, and we'll see if that gets fixed. But he's done a good job with Georgia Southern. They always seem to have that one loss. And I think that this year was to ODU that he probably shouldn't have. He did have that win. He had a couple of big wins this year, right? He had that big win against Marshall. That Marshall melted down, and then they didn't lose again. And then he had that big win against South Alabama. Had the chance again, did have the bad loss against ODU that eliminated them from contention in the East. But then, J.C. French had a bad ball game in the bowl game, and they didn't have Dexter Williams the second to bail him out. So for whatever reason, I just got to think Dexter Williams didn't practice well. And so he wouldn't name Dexter Williams the starter. So Dexter Williams moved on to Kennesaw State. We're wishing him all the best. I'm presuming J.C. French is going to be the quarterback. I also presume that J.C. French is going to have to earn that spot come not only the spring, but the fall. You just can't have the guy continuing to throw interception after interception after interception. Although I think most of those interceptions came in 2 ball games. You're going to have to cut down on those turnovers so Georgia Southern can contend. And again, if you're bringing back the same quarterback with the same coach, big believer in that, maybe it's an opportunity for Georgia Southern to contend in the Sun Belt East. And the best coach, I think, best head coach in the Sun Belt East. See if I can do a drum roll and get my timing right. I did that pretty good. All right. I think it is Bob Chesney with the James Madison Dukes. He may actually have more head coaching experience than Clay Helton, unless Clay Helton has head coaching experience beyond USC. Bob Chesney's been a head coach for well over a decade. Well, not well over a decade, but over a decade. Certainly not at the highest of all levels like Clay Helton at USC. Clay Helton's entering his 4th year at Georgia Southern. I think Bob Chesney did a pretty good job last year, did lose on the road to ULM. Did go and win a bowl game with, wasn't that the third and fourth string quarterbacks? Yeah, I think so, right? They did lose to Marshall, and that's when Alonzo Barnett the third got hurt. And yeah, I think the fourth string quarterback is the one who threw one pass for 1 yard and 1 touchdown and won the bowl MVP, which is hilarious on its face. I think we'll see, again, when you come into a situation like this, and a lot of the players went to Indiana, and a lot of players are going to graduate, and some of the better players are looking to cash in with NIL, you do have a quick opportunity with whatever high school players you did recruit last year and the high school players you recruited this year and the transfer portal guys you got in last year and the transfer portals players you're going to get in this year to put your mark on the program fast. All right. And so, again, I think the East is going to be wide open a lot more than the West because the West has their quarterbacks compared to what the East does, right? With the Jalen Raynors and the Braylon Braxtons and the Gio Lopez. And we'll see what Walker Howard is like. And we'll see if Goose Crowder is healthy. And we'll see if ULM gets any more weapons for their guys. They're set over there. I think the East is wide open, and it'll be interesting to see who can step it up. Maybe we get a surprise. Maybe, Tony Gibson takes advantage of this. Maybe it's Dowell Logains takes advantage of it. All right. We shall see. But I think it's going to be interesting. And right now I have Bob Chesney as my number one head coach. Really impressed with what he did last year, trying to live up to, what Curt Cignetti did. And I think he did a pretty good job. I mean, Alonzo Barnett, the second was it the third? Had a fantastic season, and he revitalized his career. And he went and got his former quarterback, was it Matthew Sluka? So from UNLV and formerly of Holy Cross. So they are reunited because it feels so good. We shall see how that goes in 2025. All right. So it's the two new guys, Tony Gibson and Dowell Logains, number 6, Del McGee at number 5, doing a great job recruiting. Number 4 is Ricky Ronnie. Went to a bowl game a couple years ago, kind of roller coaster up and down, woulda, coulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda in 2024. Tim Beck's gone to 2 bowl games in 2 years. Clay Helton always seems to be on the precipice of something big. Number 2 and number 1 is Bob Chesney. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. I thought the West would be a little bit more controversial. We'll see what you guys think about the East. All right, when we come back, a couple of ball games in the Sun Belt on Monday night. And again, if I wasn't watching it, I wouldn't have believed it. ULM takes down South Alabama in a game that was not particularly close. We will talk about that next after I tell you about TurboTax. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you're going to get any money back. And then waiting and wondering and worrying some more. Now, taxes is matching with TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All so you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now, this is taxes. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com. Guarantees. All right, Dave Schultz, Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. All right, we did have some basketball games on Monday night. These were the snow games from Thursday, where the South got a bunch of snow. I think Mobile got at least 8 inches. And so Southern Miss couldn't travel. Well, the South got it. Mississippi got some. Southern Miss couldn't travel to Troy, and South Alabama was stuck, could not travel to ULM. All right. Did not think for a second South Alabama was going to have an issue winning this basketball game. I don't even know what the line was. We'll tell you what it was. They did not play a particularly good game against Troy, but I thought that was more about Troy than it was about South Alabama. They still played pretty good defense against Troy. They only gave up 65 points. Let's see what this line was. South Alabama was favored by 11.5. ULM came into this ball game 0-8. Think they just had gotten blown out. Well, not blown out. Actually, they had played pretty tough. The Cajuns had beaten them 65-60, and then they had played App State pretty tough. They did get blown out by Troy. Got blown out by Southern Miss a little bit. They played the Cajuns tough twice, but here's the thing. The Cajuns aren't any good. They just are not. Cajuns swept ULM. South Alabama ain't sweeping ULM. This game was just not particularly close from the get-go. The last lead that South Alabama had was 11-9. That was the last lead that they had. The closest they had it was 18-17. Let me see. Well, maybe they tied it up again. They tied it up at 22-22. And I think that was the last time it was tied. ULM just kept on bombing it away from 3. And, you live by, as a Syracuse fan, you live by the 3 and you die by the 3. ULM hit 11 3-pointers. South Alabama hit 10, but ULM only tried 30, and South Alabama tried 39. ULM shot 40%. South Alabama shot 34%. Big difference in this one. ULM, 24 of 26 from the line. South Alabama, 8 of 13. What a huge difference. ULM out-rebounded South 44 to 35. Turnovers. A typical game for South Alabama. ULM 14 turnovers, South Alabama 6. Here's the problem with South Alabama. One thing, we talked about it a lot like App State. When you do play a defensive-minded game like South, all right, you always have that possibility that a team's going to get hot like Monroe did, and you can't combat it. The thing is, in this game, South Alabama, a couple things happened. Usually South Alabama is so efficient offensively. They do a great job of moving the ball, getting open shots, making the extra pass. So they either get a wide open 3, which they tend to make, or a layup underneath, or drive to the hoop, whatever the case may be. And they use the whole clock, and they make it. All right. And so they slow the tempo down, not necessarily with defense, but with offense. And so when they're falling behind, like in football, if you're trying to change tempo, well, we'll go to a 2-minute offense. You can't do that. So instead of using the 40-second clock and speeding it up and getting the play off in 15 seconds, South Alabama can't do that. Even at the last minute. Even in the last minute, you got wide open 3s. They're still dribbling and pump faking and trying to go to the bucket instead of just shooting the ball. It's unbelievable. You just don't understand it. Just shoot the ball, right? We do not have time to mess around. Shoot it. Doesn't matter if you miss it because you're down by 8% or 10 even. Get rid of the ball. So they don't have the speed up offense unless you're just going to heave 3, right? They don't have the Loyola Marymount 2 passes and shoot type of offense. They're going to move the ball. Second thing, Richie Riley never came out of the zone. Now, ULM is making, they have a big logo, ULM, that is stretching across midcourt. All right, it's not just in the center circle at midcourt. So when I'm telling you they're hitting him from 3-pointers from the M and the U, they're not 40-footers, but they are 25-footers. So you can only defend so much. So if you hit 1 or 2 from out there, I'm going to let you do it. But if you start hitting 3, 4, and 5, I got to come out of the zone. I got to play man-to-man. And they never did it. That's almost like saying, I'm going to keep on letting you try. And they did. They kept on making them. So if I'm not going to change defenses because I don't have a big guy that can block shots, well, go buy me. If I can't stop you, if I can't stop your 3-pointer, then go ahead and go buy me. I got it. Maybe I'll get help defense, but I'm not going to let you shoot 3-pointers anymore. You're making too many. And so that's what happened in this ballgame. Second half was not particularly close at all. It was an 8-point game at halftime, 35-27. South Alabama actually got down by 11, but then they made it, they got down 38-27, but then they made it 38-30, but then it got up to like 15. And they never really got back in the game until late, where, they're down 63-47. They did get it down to 7 points one time. They got it down. Miles Corey made a layup with, they made it 68-61 with 1:49 to go. If you get a stop there and get it down to 5 with 1.5 minutes to go, well, now you got a ball game. Now it's 2 possessions. Now you got to think about it. But ULM got a layup, and that was the ball game right from there. This was, again, this did not come down to a couple of possessions. They were in control most of the game. I don't know if this will be a wake-up call or not, but again, this is an embarrassing ball game. This is a huge win for ULM. They've had an awful season. I went through the list. They should have won 4. I said 3 or 4, but all 4. I did say winning on the road is hard. I told you that. They still should have won the game. All right. They didn't play well against Troy. I don't know if teams have figured them out or not, but that's the other thing. You don't have to score that much to beat them. I don't know, maybe they have figured it out. Well, let's see what they've scored recently offensively. They did score 66 tonight because they scored a little bit towards the end, but they haven't scored that. Well, they scored 75. Yeah, so they scored 63 against Old Dominion, right? They did score 75 against Southern Miss. They scored 64 against Troy in the win. Scored 55 in Troy in the loss. They scored 66. So their average is down, right? Because they average about 70 points a game. Yeah. Well, they were averaging 73 points a game. All right. So it's a little bit higher. All right. I thought it was closer to 70. Quickly, the guys who did really well for ULM points-wise, because they had some guys who did some. Let's see here. Coltie Young, 5 of 15 from 3, 27 points, 4-4 from the free throw line. Also grabbed 7 rebounds. Micaiah Willis, 17 points. Jalen Bolden had 12, and Tyrese Watson had 10. Jacob Wilson had 11 off the bench. Faciero had 15 to lead South Alabama. Barry Dunning was 3 of 16, 0 of 4 from 3. Miles Corey at one point in time was the conference's leading scorer, only 14 points, and John Broome had 12, and they got very little. And they got a little bit off of the bench, but Judah Brown 1 of 7 from 3, right? Again, live by the 3, die by the 3, and they just did not. John Broome hit 4 or 5 from 3, and then he stopped shooting, So I mean, only Fasario hit more than 1 3. Nobody else hit more than one besides Broom. They had a tough night. ULM beat South Alabama 77-66. And again, the game wasn't particularly close. Other ball game was Troy taking down Southern Miss. This game has a closer score than it would indicate, 70 to 61. But this game, I saw it was over 20 points when I saw it. I thought I saw it as let's see here, like at one point in time, it was 12 to 1. But I saw it in the second half. Troy was leading 65 to 38. I mean, that's 27 points. That's almost 30 points with 8:20 to go. And so, I mean, Troy calls off the dogs and Southern Miss makes a game of it. It was 66 to 41. And they got to they scored 10 straight, making it 66 to 51. And then, I mean, Troy didn't score until, they only scored 4 points. Troy only scored 4 points. How about that? Troy only scored 4 points in the last 7.5 minutes. So Southern Miss finished on a 20 to 4 run. So again, the game was not that close. All right, so checking out the standings, Arkansas State now in first place alone. They are 7-2. South Alabama and Troy and App State and Marshall all 6-3. And again, these Sun Belt tiebreakers are going to make my head hurt. They're all 6-3, tied for a second. South Alabama and Troy have split. App State and South don't play. Marshall and South do. James Madison and Texas State, along with Old Dominion, are right behind them. All right. Georgia Southern 4-5. Southern Miss 4-5, along with the Cajuns. Georgia State 3-6. Coastal 1-8, and Monroe off the schneid, getting their first win of the season at 1-8. All right. Episode went a little bit longer. Again, shocked that Monroe pulled that off. Again, South Alabama, an 11.5-point favorite on the road, but 11.5-point favorite, loses by 11. What was that? Do we have the money line on that one? Quickly, what if you bet? If you bet Monroe to win that ball game, what could you have won? Let's see here. 500. They were plus 500. It is what it is. All right. We will be back tomorrow. I did put in my requests for the coaches. All I can do is ask. Used to be able to get the coaches. I don't know who I upset. I did get responses from 2 SIDs. They're trying. I didn't hear back from the other 2. We shall see what we can do. All I can do is ask. Hope to get them on, but it is what it is. Otherwise, I have a Thursday and a Monday off next week. All right, we're going to Maker's Mark today, so that's my jam. I'm looking forward to that. So it should be a fun day. It is considered training. That's what they consider it. Really appreciate it. Please subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. You've been listening and watching Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. I will be back on a Wednesday.